Thanks, Joe. You know, one of the questions we're going to be diving into right now is how do we find hope and healing when emotional and spiritual burnout leaves our mental well-being hanging in the balance? Joining me now to share his incredible story of faith, resilience, and community spirit is Pastor David Baker of SouthPort Church in Saugeen Shores, Ontario. Welcome to 100 Huntley Street, David.
Thank you, Laura. It's wonderful to be back again.
Well, we're so thankful that you're with us today. And we had the opportunity to come up to Southport and really do a wonderful field report story on you guys using Anyone Pray, the church prayer platform that Crossroads services local churches with. But your congregation members struck our hearts deeply, as did you. The care and the love we see for one another in your church is so beautiful and it's profound. It's exactly what God is talking about in the Bible when he's telling us to be in fellowship with each other. You know, Pastor David, your life has been full of trials and also triumphs. And that even began from the moment you came into this world.
That's right.
Your story is marked by quite a miraculous moment. Tell us about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, Laura, when I was born and the doctors called it a blue birth, so I wasn't breathing. And my dad laid hands on me and prayed and believed, and I began to take my first breaths of life at that moment. Wow. And I'm so thankful that I have a family and have had a family my entire life that believes in the power of prayer.
Yeah. And
lives a God-fearing life.
Well, your family is well known in ministry circles
Yes.
for being a family full of faith and full of the character of Jesus. You know, Pastor David, to come into that legacy, was there a point where your faith in Jesus really became your own and you started to feel called into ministry yourself?
Yes, I started to feel the call of God into ministry at a very young age. I would say as early as 8 years old.
Wow.
I really felt a call of God to serve the people and to shepherd God's people. I love the pastorate, and through my teenage years, it strengthened, and all I wanted to do was be in the ministry. All I wanted to do was pastor a church, and I could see nothing else other than that, going into full-time ministry and becoming a pastor.
And Pastor David, so many are thankful that you have heard God's call in your life and pursued being in pastoral ministry. You referenced your teenage years, and these weren't, now they're not easy for any teenager, but they definitely weren't easy for you because something came to light about how you learn and the way God has created your brain. Yes.
When I was going through school, I struggled all the way through my school years. I struggled. I couldn't read like the other students. I couldn't write like the other students. And I was later diagnosed with a severe form of dyslexia. And it explained a lot of things.
Yeah.
And during this difficult season, going through school, I'm thankful that I had a supportive family. My family are the rocks, and they're so supportive and love Jesus and poured into me. And it was actually during this hard season, in my teenage years, that I met my now wife, and we met at a very young age. And my wife Heather, strong woman of God, who I love dearly. And love more and more each day. She really helped me through some of those challenging times of coming to awareness of how I learned, and she saved my life actually in so many ways.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I've met Heather, and
Yes.
I can see that. I can see that strength in her. Her faith is so profound.
It is.
Yeah. And you guys have 3 kids together.
We do.
Now tell me about your journey as a couple, moving into ministry at Southport. What was that journey like? Was it, okay, God, you've called us here? And tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, when Heather and I started into the ministry, it was a rough start.
Okay.
We had some challenges. We entered into the ministry very, very young, and the circumstances of that time were a very challenging time.
Yeah.
In our lives, and we actually ended up stepping out of full-time ministry for a period of time, and those were kind of a wilderness season where I ended up working in the secular world, and spent some time working for some other companies, and God renewed this call, this burden, this urge for us to go back into ministry when Southport became open.
Yeah.
And we went back into ministry at Southport, and we actually went into the ministry at Southport still very broken ourselves in some ways. And that congregation is a special place.
Yeah.
And it has been a special place, and you know that because you were there.
Yeah.
The congregation wrapped their arms around both of us and our family, and I attribute the healing that God did in our lives to go back into full-time ministry,
Yeah.
to the church family really coming around us from day one.
And this incredible church family comes around you, supports you, and you get your wings in ministry together,
Yes.
right? With the congregation, with your wife, Heather, the kids, and things are going well.
Things are going really well.
I mean, there was incredible growth, even in the pandemic. You started to have an amazing reach with the gospel. Tell us a bit about what happened during the pandemic.
Yeah, so right at the very beginning of the pandemic, when the world was shutting down, the mayor of our town, on the day that he declared the state of emergency for our region, he actually contacted me and he said, David, do whatever you need to do to keep hope alive in this community. And I really took that at that moment, Laura, as our mandate,
Yeah.
as my mandate, that we had to do anything we could
Yeah.
to keep the hope that we know is Jesus alive in the hearts of people in our community. And we did that to the best of our abilities.
Well, I know that thousands began to watch your church programs being streamed.
Yes, it was humbling.
Many people coming to faith in Jesus.
Many.
And even partnerships with local community broadcasters like Rogers.
Yes.
Wanting to stream out your services.
Rogers Television, Laura, they contacted us and asked
Yeah.
us if they could have the rights to our show. And we, of course, said, yes, absolutely. And at one point, they even offered some financial, contribution.
I mean,
we don't want that.
It's the favor of God.
Yes, it is.
All over the community. And yet in this season, you started to feel this rumbling.
Yeah.
I know that you also serve as a police chaplain, a hospital chaplain. You were called to do a special committee connected to the pandemic related to the COVID vaccines. And
Yes.
through that, it's something we always try to tell our viewers to really be mindful of your pastors right now during the pandemic, because the tension and the discord in the churches over how the pandemic was handled was incredibly hard for pastors. You started to come out of the pandemic, but yet your heart and your mind and your soul were stuck in a darker place. What started to happen for you? What was going on?
Laura, what happened was I didn't take any time to myself.
Okay.
And I worked so many hours over so many days that I didn't give myself permission to take a day off.
Yeah.
And I would tell myself day out and day in, I can make it through till next week.
Yeah.
I just have to get through this.
Yeah.
And then I can take some time off. And of course, that never happened. And it was the first Sunday of April of 2022. And I had got up that Sunday, went about our routine like we had done for months before. And I felt a little off that day, but I just had a cup of coffee and just pushed on. But it was that Sunday that the world kind of came crashing down around me, emotionally, physically, mentally. I still remember it. I was formulating this great thought for my message. I love to preach. I love to share the gospel. It's my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
And I had this great thought. I opened my mouth to say it, and nothing came out. And I ended up just breaking down, crying at that moment in front of my church family, in front of our viewers. And it was the beginning of a very dark time.
Yeah.
And still, even I thought, okay, I'm just going to have a good sleep, and I'm going to get right back to it, and that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it was the beginning of a 2-year journey.
And that 2-year journey manifested in anxiety, depression.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about what that was like and how God met you even in that.
There were days. First of all, Laura, I didn't know how to explain even what I was going through. I was a fix-it guy. I was the guy that people would come to, and I would help them go through their struggles with anxiety and their struggles with depression. And these were all new feelings to me. I had never, ever had these struggles before in my life. And so I didn't even know how to explain what was going on. But there were days where I would go to sleep, and I would wonder if it was over for me. I at one point became frustrated and angry with God. Yeah. I'll be honest with you and everyone. I wondered why God would take the one thing I love to do and just take it away. Because I couldn't get up and preach. Sometimes I couldn't even go to the store. And I love people. I love being around people.
Yeah.
And so this was all so new to me, and I was frustrated. And this went on for days. This went on for weeks. And a friend of our family had given us tickets to go see a Raptors game in Toronto. And I was in a really dark place and had been for quite some time. Yeah. And I would read my Bible, and through this season, my relationship with God was so strong, and that was never the question. My family, my church family, it was all so good, and I knew that this conflict that I was having within myself, and the grace that God gives, could coincide together, and it was a beautiful feeling, but a very scary feeling at the same time.
Yeah.
And so we're at this Raptors game, and I was in a really dark season. I needed to hear from God.
Yeah.
I so desperately needed to hear God's voice, and at that time, and the Raptors weren't doing well that game, and they haven't been doing well recently either. But that season, they weren't doing well in their particular game, and that wasn't normal in that 2022 season. They were doing really good that year. And my son Nathan, he was sitting beside me at the game, and he's an avid sports guy. I'm not, and I enjoy sports. But we were sitting together at this game, and the Raptors were really not doing well. And at one point, I said to Nathan, Nathan, why doesn't the coach just put out some of the really good scorers and just take back this game? And Laura, Nathan turned and he looked at me, and it was almost as though he was looking right through me. And he said, Dad, sometimes the coach will bench some of the strongest players and save them for a more important game down the road. And not that I consider myself the best, because I'm certainly not. But what was happening in that moment was God was speaking through my son right into my circumstance, right into the moment. And for the first time, in weeks of feeling alone and isolated and wondering what is next for me, I felt God saying to me that you are going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of the healing.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't happen overnight.
No.
There were many more days and weeks of struggle and pain.
Yeah.
But I knew that God had this at that point, that I was in his hands, and something was going to happen.
Yeah.
And God was going to use this in a powerful way.
And you've learned so many things through this process, so many insights about how to make sure that we don't get so depleted, that we get to a stage of burnout as ministry leaders, and what God can do in the darkest seasons through a powerful community that loves us, just the way he does, unconditionally, unabashedly. I know Heather's had a big impact on you as your wife, journeying with you in these seasons. And I just think we need a part 2 to this conversation. There's so much more to get into.
My wife, Heather, is a strong woman of faith.
Yes.
And there are many times when I say, Lord, I want to have her faith.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm so thankful for the support of not only a supportive family, but a supportive congregation.
Yes. Well, Pastor David, just after this, we'd love you to join us for the wrap, and perhaps you could say a few words about SouthPort and then pray with us for pastors across Canada, that they will be supported and strengthened. Pastor David, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. We are so thankful for you and for your heart and all God is doing through your life.
Thank you.